Hey y'all, what's up? What's up? It's Lori Girl from Phoenix, Arizona, reporting to you from Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. I'm here on the balcony of our room. My cousin Star and I are out here indulging in some great food. We've had some great entertainment so far, and we're looking forward to a possible excursion this week as well. And I just wanted to say hey to you all and know that I am deeply sorrowful for not keeping up some of my content here on this page. Life happens. I mean, life is life, in right? And it's just been pretty crazy. And I guess one of the things, I promised I would talk about, and I guess I can start with my first story about dating as a 58-year-old woman. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm about to be 59 in May. And today, as of today, it's March 10th, 2026. And it's been pretty interesting. I mean, if someone were to interview me, I would not skip a beat. I would not. Oh, I know the light is glaring behind me, so I'm just going to turn a little bit. Um, I My plan is to be completely transparent, completely honest about my dating experiences as a 58-year-old, almost a 59-year-old woman. Um, so, uh, so for those of you who know me, you know that I was married for a long time. I was married for 36 years of my life when the divorce was finally final. So I loved on one man. I loved hard. I when I see him, I'm not gonna lie that I always have a love for him because he was my first love. And he's the father of my children. And my children are incredible, all three of my kids. My oldest is 33. My middle, who is a son, is just turned 30 yesterday. And my youngest is 27. She'll be 28 this year. And they're all incredibly, incredibly, they're just incredible people. I'm very proud of each and every one of them. And it's funny because my youngest always gives me advice on the dating industry nowadays. But I'm just going to share my first experience with y'all because it's truly crazy out here. I'm telling you, like crazy. So let me just adjust this right now. I'm here. We just had dinner um, out at a on the ocean, which has been really cool. Um, so I'm just for privacy issues, I'm going to name this particular person Henry. Don't ask me where I got the name from. But Henry was a really, really nice guy. And he was basically my first online dating experience. And, it was funny because I was on a dating app and he reached out to me and he said, give me just 5 minutes of your time, please. Give me 5 minutes of your time. And I'm like, and he gave me his phone number right there and then. So I went ahead and I gave him a call and I said, hey, this is Lori from the dating app that, you sent me a request. And so I decided to at least call you because that's what you were asking. And he was like, so, oh my God, thank you for calling me, blah, 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 blah. And so we sat there and we actually talked for almost an hour. It was about 45 minutes, if I recall. And we just talked about a whole lot of different things. And he basically, it was a very pleasant conversation. It was a really nice conversation. And so at that point, um, we began talking on a daily basis, and he would text me and he would ask me how my day had gone, what I did, etc., etc., etc. And we just had a really engaging. Every day was a really engaging conversation where we were getting to know each other. And, he asked me what my story was in regards to why I was divorced, why I was single. And I asked him why, asked him the same thing. And as we got to know each other, and he was a really cool person, I enjoyed him. And I told him at one point, I said, my uncle is very protective of me. He's like a big brother. And I said, and one of his stipulations for if I decide to indulge into a relationship is that person has to make like double the money that I make, my income. And it was so funny because he actually sent me a copy of his tax returns from the prior year, and he was making like almost $100,000, and he had his own home business, basically selling sportswear and it was mostly Adidas and shoes and apparel, Adidas apparel. And he's like, if you become my girlfriend, and you're gonna get all this for free. And he shared with me a very, very vulnerable story, and of a situation that happened to him when he was, a kid, and it was a very detrimental story. And I really appreciated his vulnerability, because I think that's really important in a relationship, that you just the ins and out of the person that you're involved in, because it actually kind of helps with things that might be going on in their life that are affecting them now. At least I believe that. So he shared with me, and he was very vulnerable, and I was with him as well. And I talked to him about my story. I talked to him how, and I told him, I wasn't able to have children at one time, and we just shared stories of life. And so it was really interesting because in today's society, and I can appreciate this, but it's so different from when, I dated my ex-husband back in the mid 80s. But, he shared things with me that I didn't really expect. And there was one point where, we video chatted. And once we video chatted, we just started that ritual every day. We would video chat each other every day, and we'd say, hey, how you doing? How you doing? We talk about the day, like, like I'm having this conversation with you. We did that every day. And it was really nice, and he's like, do you think this is weird? I go, no, I'm having a really great time talking with you. It's great to see your expressions face to face. And he's like, yeah, me too. And maybe after a month of constant communication, talking every single day, graduating from phone calls to video chatting for, a period of like a whole month, he says, I really want to talk to you something that's important and it's vital to me. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what to expect. And he tells me, he says, well, he says, what did he call it? I can't even remember. He says, oh, he says, he says, the only thing, about me, he says, I understand your spirituality, he says, like, I love God as well. He says, but you have to be my submissive. And I'm like, whoa, what does that mean? Because I don't know nothing about all that kind of stuff. And he says, like, look, and when it comes to the affairs of life, he says, because I'm developing feelings for you. He said, I could see a future with you. And he was actually ready to move from the LA area to Arizona. And he was looking for someone that, he could basically have a relationship and marry and have a future with. And I could appreciate that because, for those of you who don't know, I'm not going to be a shack up kind of person. I'm looking for marriage, and it's part of my belief system, and I'm proud of it, and I have no shame in that because I know that that's what God honors. He honors marriage. And so he told me, he says, basically what it is that whatever I say you have to do in the bedroom, you have to do. He says, you might come home, and this was exactly the example he gave me. He says, you might come home one day and go into our bathroom, and you might find a note saying, saying there, take all your clothes off and only put this on. And there might be a bottle of lip gloss there. And I'm requiring you to disrobe, only put the lip gloss on, and then meet me in the location that I'm talking to you to meet about, whether it was another room, it was the gym, I don't know, just whatever he said that, he says, and when it comes to intimate relationships, you have no say so. He said, I rule in the bedroom. And I'm like, shocked. I was like, what? First of all, I was so embarrassed that he was even talking to me about that because, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is going on. I'm like, I can't believe that this person is even telling me this. But he said, Lori, he says, I really like you. He says, you're a really great woman. We've been talking for a little bit more than a month. And he says, and I can tell you that you're a great woman and I'm developing feelings for you. So this is a very important part of my life. He says, but this is what I practice in my sexuality is, um, it's, it's basically, he was like a dominatrix, I mean, guess, he says, you have to be my submissive. And just out of shock, I was like, so if I decided I wanted to do something intimately, then I couldn't, And he's like, no, you have no say so when it comes to our intimacy in the bedroom. He says, now outside of the bedroom, if you want to rule that, he says, I'll give you full dominion outside of the bedroom, but in the bedroom, you have no say so. I was like, what? I was like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And I was shocked. I was embarrassed. But not just be transparent. I appreciated his candor. I appreciated because he was actually being, if anything, very, very, very vulnerable. And it was just shocking. It was just so shocking. And I just told him that wasn't something that I was willing to commit to. I couldn't be in a relationship like that, and it was just a new experience because, you know, been with my husband for 36 years. And I mean, I'm not trying to be personal or anything, but I'm trying to be transparent. But this was my first online dating experience with someone, after, my divorce. And it was crazy. I mean, it's, it's definitely an experience. Um, but I did appreciate that he was very transparent and he made that known, because it was important to him, that he make that known because, he told me he could definitely see himself with me and that, he was caring enough, even though that's not a lifestyle that I would have wanted. And, I made sure and I made that apparent to him. So that was uh, my first experience with, growing a relationship after my divorce. And it was shocking. It was very unveiling, but in this generation and this society, people are very to the point now. And at the age of, that was a couple of years ago, so I was like 56. I can appreciate that now because I don't have any time to waste. If God ordains for someone to be in my life, He's going to ordain it, and I learned that that's what I'm going to wait on. Um, but that was really quite the experience for me. And I mean, I don't want to waste time. I don't want to waste anybody's time either, and I don't want to lead anybody on. But it was certainly an eye opener for me. But it caused me to be very transparent. When people have approached me, I tell them right away, look, I'm not the type of person who's going to give up the cookies. I said, I want marriage, and you need to know this up front. And right away, a lot of times that dismisses people, and other ones, they say, oh, well, let me get to know you a little bit more. And, that hasn't panned out either. And that's fine with me at this point in my life. But that was the very first experience. And I'm going to share more, but I don't want to take up any more of your time. But like I said, I want to tell stories. And this one was quite a doozy, especially with my reintroduction to living a single life in today's now. Like I said, that was a couple of years ago. So I am 58 now. It's 2026. I'm going to be 59, and I am not ashamed to admit that. Um, but that was then. And like I said, I was, like I was 56 at that time. So, anyways, I'm here in Cabo San Lucas enjoying a great vacation with my cousin Star. And I'm just capping on the time that I have because we're just chilling in the hotel room. And I said, like, I have time, so I'm going to record this. So I just wanted to tell you thanks for liking and subscribing. If you haven't liked or you haven't subscribed, or if there's something here that resonates with you, leave a comment. Absolutely share my video with someone. You might find it funny, you might find it entertaining, or you might find it like, whoa. It doesn't matter. But just leave a comment, because I'd like to really improve on my content and really grow my community. And like I said, I'm just a 58-year-old woman who wants to talk about life experiences. And I'm going to talk to you more about some of this dating stuff because it has been a very, very interesting. Have a great night. All the way from Cabo San Lucas. Like I said, I'm here on my balcony enjoying an evening after eating some ribeye and just a great dinner out on the beach. And uh, yeah, so if someone hasn't told you recently, I try to end all my videos in this fashion. If they haven't told you that they love you, just know I do love you. Have a great night. Be safe and enjoy life. Blessings.